Okay, so we got some questions here. What kind of safety issues are there for individuals who attempt to hack their bodies themselves, or is everything regulated so that a body hack, which requires a surgical procedure, must be done in a clinical environment? Um, well, I mean, that's kind of a complex question packed together with a bunch of other issues. So, um, depending on jurisdiction, you may or may not be allowed to cut on yourself. I think socially, obviously, cutting on yourself is frowned upon, but I think any adult is allowed to do that on themselves legally. I'm not sure at what point it endangers your life, where suicide is illegal. So, I mean, it's kind of an odd situation. So, what's definitely not legal, or it's definitely much more dubious when it comes to legal authority, is cutting on someone else. So, um, this also touches on use of, here in the United States, use of lidocaine. So lidocaine, if you just ask anybody, hey, is lidocaine, do you need a prescription for that? And they're going to say, of course you do. It's a controlled substance, which is kind of like the more knowledgeable follow-on to that. But the reality is it's not a controlled substance, and it's totally legal to own and have and sell. And it's actually legal to administer on yourself. But the moment you put it in a syringe or something and try to administer it to somebody else, then that's practicing medicine. It's a whole different set of laws, and it's totally illegal. So, um, in short, I would say the best answer, umbrella-wise, would be um, hacking on yourself is legal in a gray area sense, but hacking on someone else probably isn't. So. And there's obviously, it depends. So a body piercing artist can poke holes in you and put metal in you and do all kinds of stuff. But how that's defined is it changes by jurisdiction. So state by state, and health board, board of health, by board of health, it changes. So certain states define exactly what tools and materials. Other states define what procedures, exactly how a person is to put a needle through a particular part of skin. So how it's defined varies, and so you'll find odd situations even in body piercing where somebody practicing in this town, or has a shop in this town. I say practicing because that's a medical medical practice, but it's not what they're doing. So somebody who has a service, a shop in one town, they can perform particular procedures, installations of body jewelry, piercings, but they can't do other certain things. And then if they get in their car and they drive, 15 minutes to another jurisdiction and work out of another shop, then suddenly legally they're allowed to do certain other types of body piercings. So it's the legal aspect is very, very gray and tumultuous. But when it comes to what we're doing with chip implants, we have our X series, which are chips that are in little glass containers inside of needles. And so when you think about the logistics of what a piercing is, where you have flesh and you have a needle going through one hole, making another hole, and then leaving a piece of metal in there, and then the body has to heal around this metal. That could take anywhere from days to weeks, and the risk of infection is there until it's healed. So that's totally legal in most jurisdictions, particularly in ear piercing, the most common type of body piercing. It's legal pretty much everywhere if you're properly licensed to be a piercer. Um, what we're doing is we're making one hole with the needle, depositing a piece of novelty jewelry, and then removing the needle. But because there's no second hole, certain jurisdictions will say, oh, that's not legal because we define piercing as two holes and whatever. So this is called a single point piercing, because it's just making one hole and placing jewelry. And so there's other types of body augmentations like dermal anchors. They just make one hole, anchor goes in there, and you put a piece of jewelry on top of it. So we kind of do what we can to stay within the bounds of the law, but we personally don't do any. We're like the body jewelry company. We produce devices, and it's up to the user, the purchaser, to bring that to a partner that can perform the installation legally. And so, yeah, we're cognizant of the issues legally, but that's just what it is. That said, all that said, I think diving to the heart of the question, um, on its surface, it just sounds like you're trying to get at, is it okay for people to just start hacking on each other themselves? or other people. So my assumption, and of course I'm not a lawyer, but my assumption is, and my educated guess after looking at all this body piercing stuff and the laws around it, is that yes, you can hack on yourself. There's no law against it, but there might be serious social and societal consequences to doing that. Um, but yeah, as long as you are staying on yourself and not hacking on somebody else, that's basically legal as far as I know. Okay, number two. What's an instance where body hacking could be taken too far to be reasonable, or does one not exist? Um, well, I mean, it depends. I mean, these are all. I mean, you could view this previous question and this question as um, kind of being negative toward body hacking and just trying to point out that you're doing crazy things and it's illegal and you shouldn't be doing any of this stuff. But the reality is these are big gray areas because there's some people that think they have body dysmorphia or they have some sense that their left leg is not theirs and they want it gone and they'll gladly wear a prosthetic in its place. And then there's other people that like want to have bigger breasts because they feel like that would help them in society and for whatever reason, or people that want whitened teeth, or I mean, there might be a line there somewhere, but I don't know where that is, and I couldn't presume to draw such a line for anybody but myself. So I think that's kind of what it comes down to is body integrity and sovereignty of your sovereignty of self. You really only know for yourself, and that's it. And this is the bottom line. So, law doesn't typically work that way. The law is not subjective, and so even though it's interpretive, uh, it's not. It's rarely subjective. So, it's a tough question to answer. Uh, yeah. Number three. What's the general reaction you get when you tell people about your modifications, body hacks? It used to be death threats in 2005 when I first did this hand. It was, pretty much visceral reactions and just very negative, um, violent reactions all across the board. And now, 12 years on, the reaction is more mundane and kind of subdued. So it's just, oh, yeah, that's interesting for you. Good for you. I'm not going to do it, but good for you. Um, the positive reactions have always been very cool. I've enjoyed those. Um, I got positive reactions in 2005, and I get probably more, a higher percentage of positive reactions now. But I attribute that to the exposure effect. So this has been covered. I've been in media for over a decade, talking about this kind of thing: chip implants, body modification, human augmentation, transhumanism, even singularity type stuff. So in one way or another, I think a lot of people have heard about this, but maybe they didn't pay attention, and it was kind of just filed back in their brain. And then you talk to them today, and they swear they've never heard of something like this before, but their reactions are much more subdued than the reaction I was getting in 2005 when it truly was new information. So I think there is an exposure effect happening here in society in general, and that over time, many more years, it's going to be just kind of like the normal reaction to somebody who says, "Hey, I got a piercing or a tattoo." People will be like, "Oh, cool," or they'll be like, "Oh, cool." They'll either like it or they'll just be like, "I don't care." But I think the visceral reaction side will be gone. I think that will fade as this becomes more of a common thing. Number four, do you think body hacking technologies are going to become more streamlined and integrated as time goes on? Yes, of course. It's a technology. It's smaller. It's more miniaturized. It's becoming more powerful. So human beings, as applications evolve, human beings will adopt it. And between the time these interview questions were sent to me and the time that I'm able to answer them, a company in Wisconsin was, made some recent headlines about offering chip implants to their employees for access control and making payments at their kiosks that they sell. So it's mainstream enough that companies are like, hey, if you guys want to get them, we'll pay for it. It'll be kind of a fun, cool little thing. So it is happening. It is becoming more mainstream and acceptable by the general public. And we've even seen that in our customer base. So our initial customers were very technically minded. They knew about protocols and data and APIs and all this, and their questions were along those lines. about the products. But now the general questions are, what can I do with it, and how much is it? This is cool. So somebody who isn't really technically minded, or at least doesn't really understand the technology of the product, but they're interested. They think it's cool. So it's changing very rapidly, faster than I thought it would ever really happen, actually. Um, so the last part, please tell me your formal title, which organization you'd like to be affiliated with, so I can introduce the article. So I'm CEO and founder of Dangerous Things, biohacking company out of Seattle, Washington.